Welcome to the boardroom, everyone. Today, we are completely auditing your approach to Cambridge AS and A-level mathematics, specifically Syllabus Code 9709. Think of me as your managing director for this session, and our client brief today is a critical, highly weighted area of the curriculum, quadratics. But we're not just talking about your standard equations here. We are going after equations that are quadratic in some hidden function of x. So, grab a seat, get your notes ready, and let's dive right in and upgrade your structural strategy. Take a look at this quote. This is pulled directly from the source material, and it is a literal game changer. A senior examiner's report explicitly states that mastering equations quadratic in some function of x is the ultimate separator between a standard B-grade analyst and an A-star executive. You see, at this level, you aren't just solving for x anymore. You're trying to identify a hidden pattern. It's like a giant puzzle. If you can spot that a complex-looking equation is actually just a quadratic in disguise, and you use a smart substitution to break it down, you hold the absolute key to solving the whole shebang. All right, here's the agenda for today's executive audit. First, we'll deconstruct the core assessment objectives. Then, we'll execute the procedural framework. After that, we'll look at critical analysis strategy. And finally, we'll audit the top examiner warnings. Okay, Phase 1. Core assessment objectives. Let's start our structural strategy debate by looking at the exact cognitive domains the academic benchmarks require you to master. The assessment framework targets 3 specific areas: knowledge, application, and analysis. Now, in our math consulting world, what does that actually mean? Well, to put it simply, it means the examiners are prioritizing analytical depth over superficial breadth. You need to master precise definitions for your knowledge base. You need to prove causal relationships through your algebraic steps to show application. And critically, this is what separates the best from the rest, you have to integrate connections across other syllabus areas to hit that analysis tier and secure those top marks. So that brings us to a really fundamental question straight from the examiner reports. Why do students find evaluating their mathematical evidence so hard? Look, when you're faced with a hidden quadratic, your evidence is the mathematical structure you've just uncovered. Drawing a conclusion means you have to successfully substitute your variables back in and prove your final values are actually valid in the original context. It requires unyielding focus, and quite frankly, evaluating evidence is exactly where standard proposals fail and elite pitches succeed. Moving right along to Phase 2, the procedural framework. Now, before we step into the live audit workshop and break down the technical steps, you absolutely have to understand your primary asset here. We call it the method mark strategy. Essentially, marks are awarded systematically for demonstrating the correct logical process, even if your final result ends up being completely incorrect. This is your ultimate safety net. Say you fumble a final calculation on a really complex substitution. It happens to the best of us, but you've documented your logical process flawlessly. The examiners will still award you capital simply for proving your structured reasoning. So, when you're tackling these equations in the wild, you must follow this strict 5-step sequence. Step 1, deconstruct the client brief. Basically, what are they actually asking? Step 2, extract the relevant data points. Step 3, select your analytical framework. This is the big one. It's where you identify the hidden quadratic and choose your substitution, like, for example, replacing e to the power of x with y. Step 4, execute with pristine, crystal clear notation. And Step 5, present your findings using the correct mathematical terminology. All right, let's take a quick mid-pitch pause. Before we go in and fix a critical flaw I often see in mock proposals, you need to ensure your academic portfolio remains highly competitive. So make sure to subscribe to our channel, Ace the Exams, and enable notifications for our weekly consulting insights. Remember, executing this framework isn't just about grabbing the right answer out of thin air, it's about making your logical steps absolutely undeniable to the examiner who's auditing your paper. Okay, resuming the audit. Systematic processing for quadratic substitutions requires this unyielding timeline. Identify key elements, apply the principles, execute with clear working, verify your results for reasonableness, and finally, present your findings. Now, I really want to emphasize the verify step because this is where I see a lot of junior consultants drop the ball. If your substitution yields a mathematically impossible scenario, like, say, trying to find the real log of a negative number, you have to recognize that and reject it. You can't just leave it there. Validate your logic before presenting the final format. Which perfectly tees up Phase 3, critical analysis strategy. Let's look at how top-scoring candidates demonstrate the kind of evaluative thinking that truly closes the deal. The difference between a basic analyst and an elite consultant is huge here. A basic answer just lists isolated facts, like simply stating the roots of an equation and walking away. But an evaluative answer, that requires you to act like a true consultant. You don't just identify similarities, you highlight differences using comparative connectives. You justify your mathematical decisions with hard evidence derived directly from your working out. For instance, interpreting whether those roots are real, repeated, or imaginary by evaluating the discriminant. You show the why, not just the what. Let's jump into Phase 4, Top Examiner Warnings. We are now entering the risk assessment phase. We need to diagnose exactly where sample answers lose their structural credibility, according to the principal examiner reports. These are the top 3 classic traps you have to avoid. Number 1, deploying the wrong approach for the context. If you don't recognize the specific function acting as your quadratic base, your whole framework collapses right out of the gate. Number 2, ignoring format and presentation. This frequently means forgetting to substitute your dummy variable back into the original function before delivering your final answer. And number 3, failing to provide context-specific answers. You have to answer the exact brief you were given, nothing else. Guys, consider this an absolute high-alert risk factor. Show you're working. It sounds obvious, but candidates literally hemorrhage marks every year by skipping steps and trying to do the heavy lifting in their heads. Like we talked about earlier with the method mark strategy, even if your final pitch fails, demonstrating your logical syntax secures vital method marks. Put it on the paper. Let the examiner audit your brilliant logic step by step. All right, Phase 5, Executive Framework Summary Checklist. Let's consolidate everything from today's masterclass into an actionable executive framework so your final draft is polished, high-scoring, and authoritative. To consistently hit those academic benchmarks, your problem-solving must utilize this matrix. Deconstruct, solve, evaluate. Break the problem into logical, bite-sized steps. Always check for reasonableness at the end of your calculations, and make fully justified recommendations supported by your mathematical evidence. If you follow this matrix, your arguments will be practically bulletproof. Excellent work in the boardroom today. You now have the framework to approach hidden quadratics with the precision of an executive consultant. But here's a final provocative thought to leave you with. Today, we mainly discuss quadratics hidden within exponentials. But what happens when that quadratic structure is hidden within a logarithmic sequence, or maybe a complex trigonometric identity? How does your framework adapt to that? Think about it. To ensure your academic portfolio stays elite, make sure to subscribe to Ace the Exams, hit that notification bell, and comment below with your current tier and your target subject so we can customize our next pitch. Keep evaluating, and I'll see you in the next masterclass.